Welcome to the Customer Spotlight session of the Future Ready Application Summit. Hi, I'm Norman Sequeira. I'm the Customer Success Lead for Digital Native Customers in India. Our team helps digital native customers like InMobi build and deploy applications at scale on Azure. Today, we will have InMobi talk about one of the key applications and how they've actually built it for a billion scale on Azure. InMobi spent about 15 years in the advertisement space, and InMobi's ad platform powers their customers' growth by helping them engage with their audiences and drive real customer connections. So today, to talk about building an application at scale on Azure, we have Anshul Garg, who is the Principal Engineering Manager at InMobi. So welcome, Anshul. If you can give us a quick introduction of yourself, that'd be awesome.
Hey, thanks, Normal, providing me an opportunity to talk about and present InMobi for the media company and a tech company. This is Anshul, and I work as principal engineering manager in InMobi around about 10 years. I've been with InMobi, especially in the tech platform, and helping out to scale the business in terms of engineering side of the things. So yeah, that's about me.
So Anshul, we'd like to understand a bit more about the supply side platform that InMobi has built at scale on Azure. What were the challenges in building the SSP platform? And what Azure services did you leverage to address these challenges?
So ideally, when we try to move our whole uh, SSP and Exchange platform to Azure, there has been an approach of lift and shift model, uh, and that is what we did. It was a huge step towards making the first step towards going into cloud, and that's the very first win we had. However, once we moved to this cloud, then we basically figured out that scale is something we need to also solve for, and that is where we started having challenges, and we started using a lot more recommendations and help from Microsoft in terms of leveraging their platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service. VMSS has been one of the first step towards making our system scalable. So it's been a long journey, and VMSS, and on top of it now it's AKS. These are the two different things which we have adopted so far, and then keep us very robust in terms of scaling our business at a very higher pace.
Hey, great, Anshul. Thanks for sharing that. So you mentioned that InMobi transitioned from a lift and shift model to a true cloud native model, right? Yet, even in the lift and shift phase, your application was a complex, still modern enough, microservices based platform, right? So when you started this journey off on Azure, you started the deployments off with virtual machine scale sets, which is the infra-based or the VM-based compute platform, which can actually help power applications at scale. And then you gradually moved over to AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services on Azure, right? So could you just walk us through that particular journey? Why did you decide to make that whole movement, and what are the benefits that this whole migration exercise has actually given you on Azure?
So ideally, we have been moved and choose the model of moving to VMSS at the start, and that was a basic infrastructure and offering coming from Azure at that point of time. And definitely, we found a lot more challenges in terms of management, in terms of uh, doing a lot more stuff from the manual side of the things. But AKS movement has been a boon to us because it comes with a lot more wowness, lot more challenges of pod management, scaling, right, and being a cloud native structure of deploying things has helped us a lot and overcome all the issues which we used to have in VMS cases. So yeah, AKS movement has been a game changer for us, especially in terms of scaling our environment, scaling our infrastructure, and scaling our data center. So it has been a good step towards one of the nirvana state, I would say.
Uh, Great, Anshul. Did you leverage any other Azure services outside of AKS? Were there any other Azure services that you actually leveraged for this application?
So ideally, it's not only so ideally, if I say most of the cases we are using all three constructs of Azure, which is platform as a service, infra as a service, and software as a service, right? There has been a lot more offering being consumed by SSP and Exchange platforms, be it Redis, be it Azure DevOps for the uh, de deployment side of the things. We are using heavily Cosmos applications, right, for our key value pairs databases. So yeah, a lot more there in the roadmap and a lot more that has been consumed so far, and that actually give us a lot more scale, a lot more confidence, and a lot more stability in the systems to run the business as usual on day-to-day basis.
Great, Anshul. So yeah, I think you give us a background of as to how you actually engineered the application to move from VMSS to AKS. Since you mentioned AKS, which happens to be the platform of choice for customers building cloud native applications on Azure. Yeah, I just want to talk about some specific scenarios or some capabilities which, let's say, other customers can actually leverage to ensure that they are able to scale their applications on Azure. For AKS clusters, you do have the ability to actually scale out your application. There is a cluster autoscaler component which can actually help you deploy additional nodes when required in case the pods are working, I mean, monitoring of pods, so they can actually move the pods to a different node if required. One key component that we've had introduced was KEDA, which is the Kubernetes event-driven autoscaling. So this is a lightweight component that actually gets deployed on your Kubernetes clusters, and you can actually scale out your Kubernetes cluster based on about, I think it's about 50 plus scalars that we have, right? So whether you want to scale your Kubernetes cluster out based on messages in your Kafka, your service bus queue, or let's say based on some SQL queries, all of these capabilities and scalars are actually available in KEDA, and that's been one of the common components or core components that customers have been leveraging to scale out their Kubernetes clusters. While we talk about scale, it's also critical for our customers to ensure that they're actually able to manage costs. So we do have a lot of our customers of ours who look at using Spot instances to run their AKS node pools. Yeah, the benefits of Spot node pools are absolutely excellent when it comes to actually running, if people are running batch jobs, or you have a large complex applications which can actually survive some sort of interruptions, then Spot node pools become an excellent way of actually getting the required scale, but also being able to manage cost. Also, one aspect from a, let's say, cluster perspective is we can actually support different kinds of VM types from a heterogeneity perspective. So we can actually have node pools of different types as a part of the same AKS cluster. And you can have different VM SKUs to run specific node pools. We do even have support for running an ARM64 based node pool if required. So in case you actually want to target that node pool and run specific pods in there for that cluster, you can actually afford to do that, right? So these are just some of the things that we can do on Azure AKS to be able to scale out, and yet at the same time do that in a cost-efficient manner. Anshul, over to you. I want to understand, let's say, from your perspective, how did you go about engineering the application to scale, right? How is the platform able to hold and scale up to a billion odd devices and endpoints that actually connect to the system?
I think InMobi has we have engineered system in such a way that we should start looking at data from three spectrum. One is metrics and monitoring. Another one is how do we need to take the call on top of those data which we are emitting. And then finally, how do we scale the infrastructure, right? So these are the basic three constructs to scale any of the business. Because at any point of time, you need to know that what is happening in business or in the systems on continuous basis. We use a lot more MLAI stuff, which is actually being required for figuring out the anomaly detections. So that's the gist of scaling things. And definitely a lot more Azure services has been helping us to scale those systems, especially when I talk about a lot more data, which is being going as a egress, right? Especially in our case where we do send requests to a lot more RDSPs in the systems. And when I say egress, I'm talking about a petabyte of volume of requests which need to go outside, and figure out that Microsoft and Azure teams has actually helped us out to figure out the right set of architecture where we can actually emit that kind of request and that volume of request efficiently. Yeah, that's actually helped us to figure out that how we need to take care of ingress and versus egress, which is the major uh, uh, component of our systems, and that is where Microsoft Azure has helped us a lot.
Yeah, great, Anshul. Yeah, so very often, I think you brought an interesting point, right? Very often when we talk about scale, we talk about requests hitting a system. But as you clarified, right, it's also critical to be able to actually control and monitor the amount of data that actually flows out of that particular system. And it's great to see as to how InMobi has engineered the system to be able to maximize or rather minimize egress and still at the same time keep it cost effective. Great. So, how has this cloud scale helped InMobi from a monetization perspective? Considering that's one of the key things that the advertisement platform has to support, right? So, how has the cloud scale helped you on the monetization side?
See, I think before we moved to Azure, right, we always had a restriction of infrastructure and how do we scale our business because exchange, SSP and exchange platform is all about volume. And when I say volume, I'm talking about the QPS and transaction per second in millions, right? So getting to that scale with the right set of infrastructure and optimized infrastructure in terms of SKUs has been always been a challenging stuff for us because we need to do a lot more benchmarking and stuff, right? But along with Azure skill set, we come with a lot more stability and a lot more defined SLAs. So that's the very first thing. I think this whole stuff of providing the region redundancy and zonal redundancy has been a boon for us because that also provides us a lot more robustness in terms of high availability and disaster recovery scenarios, right? So all these aspects are basically helping us to scale our systems and scale our business at same point of time.
Thanks, Anshul, for sharing the details and as to how InMobi designed their application for scale. But yeah, I mean, as the line goes, with great power comes great responsibility. So I presume with the responsibility in this case of actually being able to serve and scale to 1 billion devices, obviously you do also have the responsibility of actually managing and monitoring these large clusters, right? We're talking about at least a few hundred node AKS clusters that you need to manage. So how is it that InMobi goes about the entire management and monitoring experience, and how is it and what components of Azure do you leverage to be able to support your the entire management and monitoring platform?
So ideally, if you ask me that each and every services come with their own metrics and instrumentations, and that is where we are trying to leverage a lot more Azure offerings, be it in application insights, right, or let's say managed Prometheus offering, something like that. So what we are trying to make sure is any services which we are actually consuming, there has to be equivalent service which coming from Azure should provide us a lot more insights, right? And it's not about insights, it's about lot more inferences from those insights is something we are trying to get it from Azure platforms, and that is where we are trying to keen and trying to invest heavily upon. So definitely there'll be a lot more requirements and a lot more collaborations and things will start happening at our level with Azure so that we can co-partner and figure out something which is equally fruitful for us and a really best suited case for us.
So, Anjal, great to hear as to how you've been leveraging some of the Azure services to ensure that you are able to manage and monitor your platform well. I'd just like to take this opportunity to actually spend a few minutes talking about some more additional capabilities or services that we've added onto this particular space, which can be leveraged by other customers. You mentioned Prometheus. So we also have managed Grafana, which is a fully managed service from an analytics perspective to be around your monitoring. It is actually based on Grafana Enterprise, and it actually has extensible data visualizations too. You can quickly and easily deploy Grafana dashboards, and it has inbuilt HA, and you can obviously control access with the inbuilt Azure security and identity access management scenarios. We also have a few preview services that can actually be leveraged. For an application at the scale at which you're deploying, it's also critical to ensure that you're actually able to load test and ensure that the service or let's say the new capabilities that you're deploying in production are able to handle the load. So in that case, we do have Azure load testing, where you can actually have run your custom JMeter scripts. And the load testing service will actually provision the virtual machines and the load agents in the backend to be able to actually support your and to take your scripts and actually run them against your target service. So that's a key thing that customers can actually leverage. And one great aspect out here is you can actually integrate that as a part of your CI/CD pipeline. So Azure load testing, you can also use Azure load testing as a part of your CI/CD pipeline. So if you are deploying a new service into production, you can actually run even a load test on it and ensure from a regression testing perspective, things are absolutely fine enough. We also do have Chaos Studio. So especially when customers deploy applications at scale in production, it's also critical to, let's say, cater to the scenario in which something unforeseen happens, right? And it's if it's the cloud, you need to design from a resiliency perspective. You need to check or you need to be prepared for the unexpected. So Chaos Studio actually helps customers do that. So what you can do is you can actually inject faults into the system. Those could be around CPU memory pressure, could be around Kubernetes faults, and you can actually see as to how your application performs in case those faults actually occur in production, right? So that's also a key service that actually customers can incorporate as a part of their application CI/CD pipelines to ensure that their application is resilient enough and can actually support and can survive when it is under stress in production. So Anshul, based on your overall experience of engineering applications at scale on Azure, what would be your advice to other customers who are building great, awesome applications on the cloud?
See, I would say being engineering things, we need to start focusing on application side of the stuff and business side of the stuff. The rest of the other things we just should leave for the cloud native platforms and start leveraging the boundness of each and every offering coming as a platform, as an infrastructure, software as a service, or infrastructure as a service, right? You just need to take the right calls at right point of time. They don't need to be chosen first, and that is how you scale business. So there has to be a lot more good offerings coming from Microsoft, especially in terms of metrics, monitorings, each and every space, right? Be it MLAI, just start consuming it, and definitely you will get a complete package of covering lot more areas end to end for the any business application.
Thanks, Anshul, for taking time out for the session. It's always an awesome experience to hear customers like InMobi and how they've engineered their applications at scale on Azure and leverage the services available on Azure. Thanks again for taking time out. Thanks, everyone, for joining for this particular session. I hope this session was valuable. Enjoy the rest of the summit.